tomorrow's quiz is on the quadrant 1, radians, ordered pairs, plus tangent values. And we'll talk about so you have a Delta Math assignment today and a tournament, and we'll talk about that at the end, okay? No, a tournament is very exciting. All right, so on the gold paper I just gave you, you have 4 of these little first quadrant circles. So on the first one, what I want you to do is I want you to put in the radian measures again, and then just the tangent values on the outside, okay? So just to the best of your ability, because remember by today we were supposed to know those. Okay, are we all good? All right, so when I think about my tangent values, I know that these two here, one of them is undefined and one of them is 0, all right? The one that is up is undefined. That's another way to think about it. Up is undefined, and then when you're at 0, it's 0. The next easiest one is pi fourths. What's that? 1. And then we just have square root of 3 and square root of 3 over 3. Which one goes with pi thirds? Square root of 3, and the other one is square root of 3 over 3. Yes? We all good? Awesome. All right, so flip it over, and let's look at one of these full circles that you have. I'm not going to have you write in all of the angle measures on here because I know these are kind of small. Plus, I want you to start looking at the circle and being able to think about the angle measures without them necessarily written on there for you, okay? Because you want to kind of be able to visualize things. So let's talk in terms of, so I know that I have pi 6, pi fourths, pi thirds. So we have 4 pi thirds angles, 4 pi fourths angles, 4 pi sixths angles, right? So I'm going to ask you about some of the other angles. I don't care about the specific measurement. I just want to know, is it a pi thirds, a pi fourths, or a pi sixths? That's all I want to know. So this angle right here, is this pi thirds, pi fourths, or pi sixths? Pi thirds. Very good. What's this one? Pi fourths. What's this one? Pi sixths. What's this one? Pi sixths. Okay. All right, we got it. Y'all are saying it like, like we're repeating things in church. So that tells me that we get it, okay? It's like a response thing. All right, so that's good. So if we know that much, then the rest is just getting the specific numbers to know what quadrant you're in. So I could give you an angle measure and then ask you what quadrant you're in, or point to an angle, and then I kind of want to see if you can visualize what it actually is. All right, so what would this angle measure right here be? In radians. That is the reference angle in degrees, but what is the actual angle measure in radians? Okay, let's back up. Woo, we got some weird numbers coming out. Okay, that's okay. Well, okay, so when I asked you a minute ago, is it pi thirds, pi fourths, pi sixths? What is this one? Pi sixths. Okay, so that's the first thing that comes in. It's a pi sixth angle, right? And since it's a pi sixth angle, if this was 6 pi 6, what's this? 5 pi 6, okay? So a good way to think through, which you don't have to because everybody's brain works differently, but that's kind of what my brain does, okay? I know that's a pi 6 angle. It's in the second quadrant. That makes it 5 pi 6. It's probably good to think through the denominator, all right? So then what kind of angle is this? Third, fourth, or sixth? Third, okay? So then specifically, what would it be? 4 pi thirds, because this would be 3, I go forward 1. Remember, in the third quadrant, all of the numerators are 1 more than the denominator. In the second quadrant, all of them are 1 less. So if I know that this is pi 6, then it has to be 5 pi 6. This is a pi fourths, so it's going to be 3 pi fourths, right? Pi thirds, so it's 2 pi thirds. Make sense? So what would this one be? 5 pi fourths, good. And this would be 7 pi 6. What would this one be? Very good. And this one? 5 pi thirds and? Good. All right, so you kind of get the hang of that there? So then if I asked you, what quadrant is 3 pi fourths in? The second. So what should happen is, you know it's in the second, and then you kind of have this picture in your brain, and you're looking up in the second quadrant, right? And so you just kind of visualize it, even if sometimes I will watch y'all as you're thinking, and you're kind of pointing around the circle, whatever works for you. But you want to be able to visualize it without having to always write everything down, right? What quadrant is 3 pi halves in? It's quadrantal, good. It's not in a quadrant, right? It's quadrantal, and we're on the negative y-axis, right? Okay, good. All right, so what I want you to do then is I want you just in the first quadrant, just on the outside, you don't have to put the angles because I know these are kind of small. Just write your tangent values again. Just in the first quadrant. Okay, so undefined is up, all right? 0 is 0, pi-4 is 1, this is the square root of 3, this is the square root of 3 over 3. Okay. So just like with sine and cosine, all of the pi-thirds angles have that square root of 3, it just the signs just depend on the quadrant, right? And we know from yesterday when we talked about the signs of the quadrant, what's our little phrase for that? Good. All students take calculus. So that means in the first quadrant, everything's positive. Second quadrant, it's sine. Third is tangent. Fourth is cosine. Okay? So knowing that and knowing this, you should very easily be able to fill in the tangent values for the rest of the circle. Would you agree with that? Go for it. Okay, so tangent is positive in the first quadrant because everything is, and the third quadrant, which means when I write my values in the second and the fourth, they're going to have to be negative. So this is a pi-thirds angle, so is this. So this is still square root of 3, but I'm in the second quadrant, so it's negative square root of 3. Third quadrant would be positive square root of 3. Fourth quadrant would have to be negative square root of 3. Right? So all of my tangent values in the second quadrant are negative. So all my pi-4s, negative 1, positive 1, negative 1. Negative square root of 3 over 3, positive square root of 3 over 3, negative square root of 3 over 3. At pi, it's 0 just like it is at 0. The x-axis is the same. This is undefined, therefore this is undefined. Okay, we good on that? What questions you got? All right, so you have 3 blank first quadrant circles and 3 blank full circles on your paper. Those are just for you to use however you want to. If you need to, so if you want to practice writing stuff on your own at some point, you have some blank ones. Whether you use them or not, that's up to you, but it gives you something to practice on if you want to, without having to erase things or draw your own circle. All right, we good? All right, so grab your blue paper. Let's look at this. So a lot of this is going to be repetitive. It's repetitive for a reason because I'm trying to make it solidify in your little brains, all right? So reference angles we've already talked about, and they were on your quiz yesterday. And from the looks of some of your faces, some of y'all struggled with this on the quiz. And this is actually a lot easier than it was the first time we did it, because the first time we did it, you didn't really understand radians, and we hadn't even done the unit circle, so you didn't really know exactly where the placement was, so you were having to kind of figure some things out. We know a lot more now, right, which is going to make it a lot easier. So we're supposed to sketch the angle and then find the reference angle. Okay, so I'm going to sketch 2 pi-thirds. But I want it to be as accurate as I can without getting out measurement tools. I know that I'm going to start here. I don't need to completely convert that angle. What is the measurement in degrees of just pi-thirds? 60. So if pi thirds is 60, then 2 pi thirds is what? 120. So I know that I go 90 and about 30 more, plus I pretty much know that 2 pi thirds goes right there, okay? But I'm saying, like, if you didn't, then you kind of know what's happening here. So this is 2 pi thirds, and then this is my reference angle, which is what? In radians, pi thirds. Everything is in radians. All right, 11 pi 6, what quadrant am I in? Fourth. What is the measurement of pi sixth in degrees? 30. So that means I go all the way around except not for 30, but plus you kind of know now where 11 pi sixth is, I would hope. So this is 11 pi sixth. And then your reference angle is what? Pi sixth. Those are like super easy questions, right? Negative 5 pi fourths. What quadrant am I in? Second, because it's negative, right? So I would start here. This gives me negative 4 pi fourths, and then I got to go one more. I know pi fourths is 45, so I'm about right there. That is negative 5 pi fourths. My reference angle is pi fourths. Yes? Questions? All right, you do the next three. Once you're done, check yourself with me. Do we have any questions? You want to get to a point where you don't need to actually graph it in front of you to picture these things. And I think for the most part, if we go one time around the circle, you got that down. But even if it's more than one time around the circle, like negative 7 pi thirds, you know, you got to think, all right, I'm going to go all the way around. That's negative 6 pi thirds, and then that ends me in the fourth quadrant, because it's going to be important for what quadrant we end up in. All right, are we good? Any questions at all? And just vocabulary-wise, this angle right here, if I just asked you from 0 to 2 pi, what would the measurement of this angle be, starting from here? This is 3 pi thirds, this would be 4 pi thirds, this would be 5 pi thirds, right? So 5 pi thirds and negative 7 pi thirds, those are coterminal angles because we land in the same spot, right? Along with just negative pi thirds even. We'd end up in the same spot for all those. Okay. All right, so let's look at actually finding these other values. And you can kind of ignore those directions because we don't really want to do it that way. We are going to talk about, and we're going to write some extra stuff down on here that you wouldn't always have to write down, but I want you to go through a logical thought process instead of jumping all the way around. The more consistent you are with this stuff, the way better you are. So remember, if we know the first quadrant and we can find all of our values with our hand trick, then we are good to go. I need to figure out, first of all, for these angles, what quadrant I'm in, and then in that quadrant is whatever I'm finding, sine, cosine, or tangent, is it positive or negative? Okay, so remember, we have all students take calculus. All right, so sine of 2 pi thirds. So my first thought is, all right, 2 pi thirds, what quadrant is that in? Second. It is in the second quadrant. And in the second quadrant, is sine positive or negative? Positive, all right? So that means now I don't care about 2 pi thirds anymore. I've figured out everything that the 2 pi thirds part gives me. Now I just want to look at the reference angle, which is pi thirds. And if I use my hand trick, the sine of pi thirds is what? Square root of 3 over 2. And I know it's positive because I already figured that part out, so my answer is just square root of 3 over 2. Right? I'm not writing out the entire circle. I got to pull pieces off without staring at a circle. All right, cosine of 5 pi fourths. 5 pi fourths is in which quadrant? The third. Okay, so I'm in the third quadrant. In the third quadrant, is cosine positive or negative? It's negative, okay? So now I just focus on the pi fourths part. What is the cosine of just pi fourths? Square root of 2 over 2, right? But then this is negative, so my answer is actually negative square root of 2 over 2. So think quadrant. Does that make it positive or negative? Then value. And if you do the same thing every time, it'll be a piece of cake. All right. 11 pi sixths. What quadrant is that? Fourth. All right. And in the fourth quadrant, is tangent positive or negative? Negative. All right. So then what is the tangent of just pi sixths? Square root of 3 over 3. So that means my answer is negative square root of 3 over 3. Sine of negative 2 pi thirds. What quadrant is that in? Third. Okay. So I'm in the third quadrant. In the third quadrant, is sine positive or negative? Negative. The fact that I decide negative here has nothing to do with whether the angle is negative or not, right? So sine is negative. So now I just care about pi thirds. What's the sine of pi thirds? Square root of 3 over 2. And I make it negative, so it's negative square root of 3 over 2. Make sense? See that thought process there? Because if you know the first quadrant, you know everything else, as long as you can figure out what quadrant your angle's in. All right, so let's talk about quadrantals again. We're not going to write all this stuff down again because it takes a while. I just want to remind you, and y'all did a good job earlier, is that if I land here and I say, what quadrant are you in? You're not in a quadrant, so your answer is quadrantal positive x-axis, quadrantal positive y-axis, quadrantal negative x-axis, quadrantal negative y-axis, right? And we already wrote it down on the other page. We don't need to write it again. All right, so let's talk some unit circle stuff. And we have been kind of writing the same thing over and over again, but again, for a reason, I'm trying to solidify it here. So we have a unit circle. Unit circle has a radius of 1. So here's my unit circle. My radius is 1 right here. So this 1 is. And then I know for every point that I have, that's a right angle there. This is x, this is y. We know that sine for this angle, opposite over hypotenuse, it will be y over the radius, but because we're talking unit circles, that's why it gets to just be y. That's why cosine is just x. Tangent is y over x, no matter what. Then we have our reciprocals, which we're going to get to those values pretty soon too. The cosecant of theta would be the reciprocal of what? Sine, which is 1 over y. Secant, 1 over x. Cotangent, x over y. So the unit circle is frequently used to map pi sixths. Hang on. Write that better. Pi sixths, pi fourths, and pi thirds, and their multiples, as well as 0, pi halves, pi, 3 pi halves, and 2 pi, the quadrantals. Right. And the whole mapping idea is that we understand the first quadrant and the rest of them just map to the other quadrants, and there's a bunch of reflections there. They're all related. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing we did on the front. We're going to do 3 more together, and then I'm going to let you do some here. So it says state the quadrant and the angle, so just like we did before. 3 pi-4, what quadrant is that in? Second. In the second quadrant, is sign positive or negative? Positive. So that all I care about is, what's the sign of pi-4? What is it? Square root of 2 over 2, and that's my answer. So then the cosine of pi, what quadrant is pi in? It's quadrantal, so we have to write that it's quadrantal. And that's on the negative x-axis. So instead of thinking, is it positive or negative here, I want to think, when I'm at pi, what is the ordered pair at pi? Negative 1, 0. That's my ordered pair, right? So then, what is the cosine? Negative 1, because it's just the x value, right? So picture where you are, think about the ordered pair, pull off whichever value you need. Tangent of negative 5 pi-3. What quadrant is that in? All right, it's negative, right? So if I start here, this is negative 3 pi-3, 4 pi-3, 5 pi-3, because negative 6 pi-3 would give me all the way back to the beginning, so I'm in the first quadrant. In the first quadrant, everything's positive. So I just need the tangent of pi-3, which is square root of 3. Everybody understand the process, right? All right, you do the last ones. The last 9, all by yourself. I realize it was probably not enough time to do all 9 of them, and that's okay, but you got most of them done, right? All right, we're going to go through them together. I'm going to call on people to help me out here. So if we get to one that you hadn't done yet, we can work through it together. It's fine. I don't want you freaking out. All right. I'm going to do that over here again so I'm not displaying your names to the world. All right. Gabriel, tell me what you got for the sine of 2 pi thirds. Yes. That's positive. Square root of 3 over 2. Very good. Okay. Do we agree with that? Yes. Awesome. All right. Brenda, what did you get for 15? Undefined. And what quadrant are we in? Very good. Quadrantal negative y-axis. All right. Joelle, what did you get for 16? Yes? Okay, you don't seem confident. It's in the third quadrant. Yes, because it's negative 5 pi 6, right? So if I start here, that's 6 pi 6. I got to back up 1. I'll be in the third quadrant. Okay, so you're in the third quadrant. Does that make it positive or negative? We've got all students take calculus. In the third quadrant, tangent's positive. That means cosine is negative. Okay. So then what would my final answer be? You got it. Good job. Negative square root of 3 over 2. All right. Thank you. All right. Swazi, what did you get for the cosine of 3 pi fourths? Okay. Sure. Very good. Negative square root of 2 over 2. All right. Everybody good so far? All right. Isela is not here. Nyla, what'd you get for 18? Okay, it's in the second quadrant, so are we positive or negative for tangent? Sine is positive, which means tangent is negative. Okay. Then do you know what the tangent of pi thirds is? Remember, pi thirds and pi sixths has the square root of 3 in it. One of them square root of 3, one of them square root of 3 over 3. Just square root of 3. Okay. And then since this is negative, I got negative square root of 3. Yes? We're all good on that? Awesome. All right. Tangent of pi halves. V? Uh-huh. Undefined. Very good. So it's a quadrantal positive y-axis, and it's undefined. And I'm going to be lazy, and I'm not going to actually write out the rest. All right. Cosine of negative pi fourths. Brenda again. Okay, it's in the fourth quadrant. Is cosine positive or negative in the fourth quadrant? It's positive. Okay, good. So then my answer is square root of 2 over 2. You got it. Good job. All right. Alexa, what'd you get for 21? Okay. Okay. Should be 1, and it is. Good job. All right. Last but not least, Devin. Okay. Negative. Okay. So 1/2. Very good. Y'all good with all that? The more you do this, the quicker that thought process will go. You'll get better at it, just like everything else, okay? All right, so now what I need you to do is I need you to get your tablets out, go to Schoology, okay? Because if you notice on here, you have a Delta Math assignment, and there's a tournament, and I'm going to help you get set up on the tournament and explain it. So some little thing about the tournament while you're getting there. Apparently, because when we did this last period, you can start a game, and then it tells you to turn off your ad blocker, and even if you do that, it still doesn't, and I'm 99% sure it's the school Wi-Fi. So I'm going to get you set up, and then you're probably going to have to do this when you're not on the school Wi-Fi. You could even end up doing it on your phone. We'll get it set up on your tablets, but once you're logged in, then you can do it. And it's kind of a practice game. Games is what it is. And they are, it says it's due on the 9th, but I really have it ending Friday afternoon. That way you could go back and practice more. You're going to be able to do it as many times as you want. The first time through, especially if the Wi-Fi kicks you off, your grade might suck on it. It's okay. Or you might be confused as to what they asked. Whatever, you do it again and it makes up for it and it's totally fine. All right, so when you're in Schoology, there's a couple other things I want to show you. In the third 6 weeks folder, you have the calendar like you always do. I don't know why the spacing gets weird. I guess it's the settings on the thing. So there's a couple things in there that I put in there for a couple of people a while back, but this is everything this week. So if you're out this week, everything that we're doing, it's going to be in here. Maybe. Okay, there we go. So also I have a Quizlets folder. In this Quizlets folder, there are 3 links. I will add more as we go. So most of you probably have Quizlet accounts for some other things. These are just flashcards to kind of help you practice, all right? And you can do different things with them. Then these are the 2, just like I said, the files that if you're here, you probably don't need to access except for today. Go into today's folder. These first 2 things are just the PDFs of what we already did. Then I want you to click on this that says you have to do Delta Math and this. And then if everybody will click on the Click Me, I will step you through this so that you don't have to read this because you probably can't read it up here. So everybody click on Click Me and get to that screen. Let me know if you're having issues because you shouldn't have any issues getting signed up. It's when you start to play. All right, so then there's a blue box that says, yes, I want to join now. Click on Yes, I want to join now. Then you sign in with Google using your district credentials. Once you do that, you're going to have to click on Yes, I want to join now again. Once you've done that, I don't know if I'm going too fast or not, then click on Step This Way. And it should say Fin and Pre-AP Pre-Calculus 2122 at the top. Over on the left, there's some things you can choose. Choose tournaments. And you will see 4 games that you have to play at least once. Yes, this is a grade. It's not optional. All right, but you can play it multiple times, and I think playing them will help you. I was trying to find another way besides just writing it on paper and doing flashcards. And you have until the tournament ends to play, which is, like I said, Friday at like 5, I think. I wanted you to have plenty of time to get through all of that. So you can start a game if you want, but I'm pretty sure it's going to, you can get maybe through 1 or 2 questions, and then it says, oh, sorry. But I think that it is, I really think that it's the school Wi-Fi. I'm going to try and figure that out before the end of the day. But it's at purposegames.com, I think. Yeah, purposegames.com. So if you go to purposegames.com on your phone and you log in with your district Google, then you should be able to get right back to that on the tournaments. You can do it on your phone. When you're not on the Wi-Fi, you can do it on your tablet when you're not on the school Wi-Fi. If there's still an issue when you're not on the school Wi-Fi, I'm going to figure that out, and I'll let you all know too, and then we'll figure something else out. But these are actually good ones. And I picked 4 specific ones that didn't have degrees, that had the right answers, had it in a decent form. Okay, does that make sense? So it's not going to do you any good to try and play these games until the end of the bell because I don't think you'll get very far, but you could try. So just go ahead and work on your Delta Math. All right. And one other thing I wanted to tell you is that I don't think I can get back to my calendar. Oh, I can. On Friday, we have a test. All right. So test on Friday. We'll talk about a review for that. Next Wednesday, I'm 99% sure it's Wednesday, is when our, quote, final is. It's not really a final. It's going to be like a super basic 6 weeks test that's going to have the stuff from the last test and the stuff from this test on it. And if you think about this test, We've been working on this for 2 weeks. We've done we've done basic right triangle trig and a whole lot of unit circle stuff. There's like not a lot of topics, right? But you'll have a review for the final exam. I'm required to give it. I'm required to count it as 1 grade. It's just the way that it is. It's better than a final though, trust me. And because I'm not for the final exams at all. All right, and we'll talk about this test on Friday more before then too. Okay, we good? Awesome. And don't forget, you got another quiz tomorrow. We're going to have a quiz every single day on the unit circle, so just expect that. I'll tell you how I'm going to kind of build with more information as we go. So reminder that today is the deadline for any retesting. I will be here for MAV time and after school, but then after that, that's it. All right. So make sure that you get that taken care of if necessary.